Hello. Real quickly, I want to talk about how this certain group of people, I didn't look into it because I'm not that interested to waste too much time in researching it, right? Because it really doesn't matter, but I just want to talk about it. Well, it doesn't matter to me, okay, because I'm not interested in the community like that. So it doesn't matter to me, but it can be a big deal. And I was, when I was working in a skilled nurse facility as an OT, these people have their TV on. So this person I was working with had their TV on. And I heard a person, I don't know if it was a host of a talk show. Yeah, it was like the host of a talk show. I don't know the name of the talk show. And it talked about how they call them African Americans. Okay, this is the words. African Americans have the second highest when it comes to income behind white Americans. So in the United States of America, you mean tell me you have all these Mexicans, you have all these Asians, and you have these other groups, and the so-called African Americans, how they call African, they just say Black Americans, okay? So-called Black Americans are number 2 when it comes to the highest income earned, the highest income. African Americans or Black Americans come in second under white Americans. Here's what I have to say. What's wrong with the community? And the reason why I didn't go any further to search into it, to look at the real statistics, because I'm not into the community enough to really do that much work, okay? But if it's true, I just want to say this. And you know why I believe it's true? Because you have a lot of athletes. You have a lot of people that are athletes that are so-called Black Americans, okay? A lot of people. You have a lot of football players. You have a lot of basketball players. You have a whole lot of rappers. You have a lot of rappers, and you have a lot of singers, but a lot of rappers, okay? That's just coming out strong. Of course, you got your actors and actresses, but you got that everywhere. And even with that, you still have a lot of actors and actresses. Well, no, not really. They use kind of the same brown people, Black people over and over again. You do have a lot of so-called Black Americans in other films like independent, but they're not making money like that. So I don't really want to bring in the actors and the actresses type of income, because I don't think it's a whole lot of them. I think the same ones are being used over and over again. I don't think it's a whole lot of them that get that kind of exposure like that. Let me say it like that kind of exposure, okay? So I'm going to stick with the athletes, the rappers, and the athletes and the rappers. It's a lot of brown men, Black men, football players, basketball players, and rappers. And of course, you got a lot of women. There's rappers and singers too. But for the most part, the male counterpart is really the reason why. The reason why I believe that so-called Black Americans come in second to white Americans, because of that. Like, they make millions and millions of dollars a year. Compared to Asian Americans, they come together and they run a business, but it's not necessarily the same. They're not making nothing in a year compared to two Black male athletes. So a lot of times, them Asians that can run a healthcare facility. And you can have an Asian family that run a nursing home. You can have an Asian family that run boarding cares. But they still, in 1 year, might not make what 2 or 3 Black male athletes or rappers will make. So, now what's wrong with the community? And I've said this before. I forgot who I said it to. Oh, yeah, I remember. I said the problem with Black America, so Black people don't know how to manage their money. You know what? That's true. But a lot of people don't know how to manage their money well. Honestly, what it is communities come together. You have communities that come together. And so 1 or 2 people's weaknesses are not shown when you have a community that come together, like, for instance, Asians or, maybe even Caucasians. I've seen a lot of people in those groups that don't know nothing about no finances. I've seen a few Indians that don't know nothing about no finances. I have Filipino Asian women that ask me stuff about certain finances. So they by themselves, let me tell you something. They by themselves don't really have all the answers. Now, they can be responsible, though. They're not irresponsible, let me say that. But for the most part, they are no better, really. They're no better in finances than really black people are. I'm just saying, let me put it like this. They don't know any more about finances than black people do. When you listen, I am saying black just because the black is just what's used. I know I usually say brown. When I listen to a lot of black people on YouTube or whatever, black people know their stuff when it comes to finances. And I see a lot of black people that know their stuff when it comes to finances. And these athletes, they can hire a professional person to deal with their finances if it's something they don't know, right? But for the most part, I see a lot of black people know their stuff. So what's the issue? The issue is that black people don't like each other. Let's I see people want to get online talking about, well, black people don't know. It's always an excuse why black people are failing as a community. Black people are failing because they don't like each other. That's just the bottom line. It's not because of what one person don't know. It's because they don't like each other. Let's call a spade a spade. Hello, I'm speaking. They just simply don't like each other. It's not because of what a few people don't know. I have coworkers that are Indian that, it's like this coworker that just seems to need money. And she's married, but she seems to need money. So that's what I'm saying. I just don't look at an individual person and think they have all the answers, because they come from a culture, a group that take pride in themselves, and they're successful because they come together. Anytime people come together, they're just going to be successful. Anytime somebody come together with that common goal, the most likely 9 times out of 10, they're going to be successful. It's not because one person and one group have all the answers, because I've seen in lots of cases that you can come across that one person that's a member of that particular group or culture or nationality, and that one person might not know any more than an average black person, an average brown person. But because they are part of a culture or nationality that take pride in themselves, then it makes them look good too. That's just it. It makes them look good too. It makes them look like they're smart too. There's Asians, not all Asians are good at math. Not all Asians, but you know what? I've seen some black people that's excellent at math. The black men used to be known as scientists. What happened to that? Now they're rappers and athletes. They used to be known as scientists. What happened? They used to be known as the George Washington Carvers of the world. They used to be known as the Malcolm X's of the world. What happened? They all became rappers and athletes, and nothing wrong with that, but it's like now they're not allowed to act like they're smart. Now they're not allowed to act like they're smart. And then when you have the brown woman or with all this education, then the men get mad at you this and you all independent. No. You decide to dumb yourself down because you come from a community that act like education is just a waste of time. But you live in a society where you might need some education. That's the problem. Or you might need to know how to hustle. Just let me say that. It used to be a time where it was not, when brown men were smart. When they used to enunciate, it used to be a time they weren't accused of acting white. There was a time that the Martin Luther Kings, and I'm talking about as far as enunciation. I'm not talking about whatever he did with somebody else in a hotel. I'm talking about, it used to be a time when the Martin Luther Kings and even the Jesse Jacksons and even the the Malcolm X's, George Washington Carvers, Booker T. Washington, it used to be a time that they could be extremely intelligent and they can speak very proper, and they were not accused of being a white person. Now you get into a culture, really came in Generation X, maybe towards the tail end of, it's Generation X. It really started with that. I remember growing up with that crazy mess, especially in the South. That you were not allowed to pronounce your words. You had to speak some kind of Ebonics. And then you had to slur your words and you had to carry on your sentences and you just cannot break up. It's like you had to be ignorant. Because let me tell you something, I have no problem with this. They pushed a lower class type of existence on all so-called black people or brown people. They pushed this lower class type of mentality on all people. Like, you have white people, right? And it's understood that you have different classes of white people. But what it is that when it comes to black people, it's like, no matter where you come from, no matter where you were raised, you have to have the mentality that you grew up in the projects. You have to have that mentality, or else you just were not black. And that's why I said many times I'm not black. Because then I can't be myself. That's not how I grew up. Okay? That's not how I grew up. So if that's what you call being black, then I'm not black. Now you're telling me to be something I'm not, because you're pushing a particular type of mentality on everybody with brown skin. And that's why I just say I ain't black then, because I don't know about that. Okay? But I definitely had my experiences, though. Trust me. See, that's another thing. If you ain't grew up in the projects and you ain't go through this and you ain't ever had no problems, that's another thing that people I get sick of. That's another thing I get sick of, because some of the shit that some people done been through, they've been better off growing up poor with some of the shit I done seen people go through. It'd be better if they could have just grown up poor and learned how to be a self-made person. Be self-made. You learn how to hustle better that way. And by the way, so-called black Americans are not the only ones that are poor, that have been poor. You know, you go to different areas in India, you go to different areas in the Middle East, you go to different areas in Asia, you go to different areas in Africa, wherever it is, you're going to see a lot of people that are very poor, that hustle. They have to hustle. You know. But, getting back to it. The original. So, so-called black Americans are the second when it comes to the highest income behind white Americans. So what is wrong with the community? They don't care. And I was speaking to a lady, actually I was speaking to a Caucasian lady when I heard that. And I said, you know what it is? These, most of the income is coming from high-paid athletes and musicians, rappers, mostly rappers. And, that's a large number is coming for that. That means they make a lot of money. They make a lot of money. You can give a whole lot of Asians to come together and build these communities, and you still get all these black athletes and whoever that can still come collectively make more money than these Asians. What does that say? That means that they are not really giving back to the community. They are not. They most of the time they are going. Most of the time, they choose members to be their spouse or whoever. They choose people from a different nationality, especially the males. A lot of times, these athletes, they do not choose women who look like them. When they make it to that level of success, most of the time, they do not choose women that look like them. They actually kind of abandon their communities, and they actually have to do whatever the machine tells them to do. So just because they make a lot of money doesn't mean they have the privilege of really doing a lot for their community, because they have to still do whatever the machine tells them to do. So whatever their income and the money they're bringing in does not matter. And I've even heard this, that a lot of athletes, basketball players, football players, a lot of times they're told that they have to hook up with white women or just non-black women altogether. But a lot of times it's white women. A lot of times they're told that they have to be seen with this white woman. Okay? And a lot of times they do that. I don't think they have a big problem with that. So that's what I'm saying. It's not the fact, to me, this is just my opinion. It's not the fact that, black people just don't know about fun. No. It's because they don't want to come together. They don't want to stick together. They don't have the same pride within themselves as a community that other nationalities have. That is the problem. Because black people are far from stupid. Let me just say, they are far from dumb. So if black people, brown people, whatever, really took pride in their community, like you saw in the communities that were very successful in the 1920s or whatever, 1930s. If black people took pride in their communities like during those times, it would be a different story. It would be a different story. So that let me know that people, I see a lot of victimhood when it comes to Black Americans as far as poverty is concerned. But they are the highest paid under white Americans. So what's the problem? See, that's not that many Black people are really in poverty like that. It's the issue of Black people don't really take pride in their community as a collective the way other groups of people do. They just don't take pride in their communities and they own who they are the way the other communities do. They tear each other down more than anybody, and tear each other down publicly more than anybody. Everybody got problems in their community. Everybody got violence in their communities. Everybody got that. But they still have this sense of pride about who they are, that they will not let somebody else come tear up their culture, tear up their nation. They will not let somebody else come and tear up their nation. They still have enough pride within themselves that they will not let somebody else tear down their nation. And so-called Black people do not have such pride within themselves. Okay? So anyway, yeah, that's it. I was going to say something else because I'm not going to upload another video. This is going to be a different subject. Because, excuse me, I'm not going to upload another video to talk about this because I don't want to take the time to do that. Sorry about that. I noticed that you have a lot of women. Now, I've been noticed that. A lot of women like to make excuses for so-called Black men. And I hear women talk about how, these mothers, the way they raise their sons, they raise them to be feminine, and it's because of slavery, because, the woman had to raise her son not to run his mouth. She had to raise her son not to be a man. She had to raise her son not to stand up to the master or else he'll get killed. So now you have some women, especially Generation X and Boomer women, that still want to talk about how women back in slavery used to raise their sons and not to stand up to the master, and so they don't get killed. And they using that as an excuse of why so-called Black men are what they are today. But I don't want to get on that. Here's what I want to say. These same women, I notice, go harder on other so-called Black women than they do on Black men. So they can, they see the so-called Black women do things, like do something crazy, and they will rip that woman to shreds. They will literally rip her to shreds. But when it comes to the Black man, the so-called Black man, it's a lot of excuses for why he does what he does. And so I'm saying that those same women that talk about how these Black mothers raise their sons to be feminine, and criticizing a lot of these women for raising their sons to be feminine, they're doing the same thing when they see a woman do something and they rip her to shreds. Like literally tear her down. And it's not to say that it's not deserved, but I'm just saying, you rip her to shreds. And then when this guy does something, this man does something, it's a lot of excuses for why he does what he does. Maybe he had a bad relationship with his mother. Maybe this, maybe that. So you're doing the same thing that you said those women in slavery, how the women in slavery used to protect their sons from master. You're doing the same things. But the master that you're protecting him from now is himself. The master you're protecting him from now is responsibility. So those women, to be honest with you, they do the same. They're doing the same. They don't realize they're doing it. They don't realize they're doing it when they rip a woman to shreds. But then when it comes to these guys, these men, it's almost like you have every excuse in the book for why they do what they do. But when it comes to the women doing crazy stuff, there's no excuse for her. You tear her apart. You tear her apart. Now I'm talking about the other women that do this. I ain't talking about men that get online and say stuff. I'm not really caring about the things that they say, honestly. I'm not really caring about the things that they say. I'm talking about other women who literally receive. It's not to say that other women ain't doing nothing crazy, right? But you don't give her the same grace of saying that maybe she's crazy like this because of X, Y, Z. But you definitely give this man or this male every excuse in the book for why he does what he does. And you have more compassion. These women have more compassion for these men that do all kinds of crazy stuff. But when it comes to another woman, it's like she is ripped apart without giving any kind of excuse. Okay? And for me, you're doing the same thing. When women do that, they're doing the same thing that these mothers did with their sons in slavery. Because now you are so worried about him being hurt, you are so worried about him being fragile, that you are literally protecting him from being a responsible person. But you make sure this woman take all kinds of accountability. And that's good. You should. But you make sure she take every bit of accountability without even considering what caused her to be like that. But when it comes to this male, I think I have to call him a male because I don't think these black women, these so-called black women, I don't think they like for so-called black men to grow into. I don't think they really like for black males to grow into men. I don't think they want that. Even the ones they say they do. I really don't think they want that. Because if you're going to rip the woman to shreds, then you rip the male to shreds the same way. And I am calling him a male because I don't think a lot of so-called black women like these males to grow into men. I don't think... grow into men as it is in this type of society or this type of paradigm or construct. I don't think they like that, so I'm going to call them males because that's what these women like them to be. They like them to be males. You know, I've been seeing that a couple of times where these, like, literally people made excuses for Kevin Samuels when maybe he had a hard time with his mother. Tommy Sotomayor, well, maybe he didn't get along with his mother. I know the story with Tommy Sotomayor. His mother had an affair with some kind of preacher. And that you're going to rip her to shreds, but you ain't going to rip that preacher that cheated on his wife to shreds, that abandoned his child, that didn't care. I get that she knew what she was doing, but he knew what he was doing too. I'm still saying, I still see where the woman is ripped to shreds, but the male is not held as accountable as the female is or the woman is. Okay? And so once again, you're protecting him from the master called responsibility. You protect him from the master of his true self. You protect him from the master of growing into a real man. And they don't realize they're doing that. You beat the woman down. You actually help her be accountable. You actually help to, if she even listens, you help to turn her into a better person. But as far as that black male is concerned, you do it injustice for him constantly making excuses. And it's no different, like I said, and I'll be done, it's no different than these mothers protecting him from the slave master doing slavery. It's no different. You're doing the same thing. Okay? But anyway, that's it, and I'll talk later.